Hey everyone, it is 1:01. I think we're good to start now. Thanks for checking out today's event. My name is Amal Wahab from Women in Leadership Foundation, Ottawa. But we actually have guests today from one side of the country to the other, from Newfoundland and Labrador to BC, from down in the US as well, Illinois, Virginia, Texas, and from outside around the world, New Zealand, Germany, Italy, and Kuwait. And we're all getting together today for this mini workshop on building your resilience with Dr. Deb Thompson. She's a professional certified coach and a registered psychologist. We have already sent out some worksheets to go along with today's event. Let us know if you haven't received them. It was about an hour before the event. And if you have any questions, just put them in the chat in the bottom of your screen because we're going to have a Q&A afterwards. Here's Dr. Thompson.
Welcome, everyone. So happy to be here. And I'm just going to share my screen so that we can go through some slides together. So today I want to talk about building your resilience using 4 pillars of support. And my byline is beyond just do it. This will become more clear to you what I mean by it. Although I think it's quite clear that with the Nike slogan of, just do it, decide and do it, isn't working for us these days when we're so depleted. We're depleted in our 12th month of unprecedented stress with COVID-19. And I list here 6 aspects of this stress. And as we go over these, I want you to just make a little jot note of whether you have felt this to be stressful to yourself, either directly or just vicariously through the news and or people you know. So what have we been facing? The threat of a very serious and life-threatening illness, 2.4 million deaths to date, probably more, obviously, since I wrote the slide a few days ago, job loss and cutbacks, businesses struggling and closing, relationship stress, separation and divorce is on the rise, along with more severe aspects such as domestic violence, isolation and loneliness. So look at those 6 aspects of the stress related to COVID and just make some little ticks as to how many of those 6 apply to you. And there's more. We are also facing remote working, remote leading, remote schooling, sometimes all of the above, shifting rules and information and expectations and creating some controversies and conflicts among friends or family as to what we should and shouldn't do. If you have any pre-existing challenges to your health or your relationship or your finances, typically those have been exacerbated. I know for me, I've probably had a tight neck most of my life, but spending so much more time at the computer has definitely made that worse. One of the biggest stressors is uncertainty. Human beings don't like that. We like to be able to plan, and right now it's very difficult to make any sort of plans because we don't know what to expect will be available or accessible when. We've all faced a loss of access to things we like to do, our hobbies and sports and recreation, and having normal holidays and traveling and socializing and celebrating. My daughter was supposed to get married last May, and that's going to happen in a year and a bit now. So disappointing. People with graduations and all kinds of things. And I guess coping with everyone else's experience of the above. If you live with people, if you have partners or children or friends, parents, those people's experience of these stressors is going to affect you as well. And concurrently, this past year, we've had pretty epic global political strife, especially in the USA, right up until the inauguration and so on, and kind of ongoing significant racial reckonings and so on. So the news has been quite disturbing. So this is a further 7 stressors. if you would put in the chat box, please, and Amal's going to take a look for us as to taking a little bit of a pulse on our collective stress right now. Of these factors, how many have been stressful for you and or are stressful for you personally or vicariously? And if you wouldn't mind just popping that number out of 13 in the chat box. So what does the research tell us about how we're doing? And this has been studied beginning early on in the pandemic as well as more recently. And a sad result is that only 1 in 6 employees feel supported by their company, despite almost all companies reporting that they have made HR policy changes. So there's a big gap there. About 2/3 to 78% of people worldwide, leaders who were surveyed in the McKinsey study, as well as an American Psychological Association study, consider personal mental health issues a top challenge. So the vast majority. And women are affected more than men because traditionally women are juggling not only their professional work, but also the lion's share of care for children, elderly people, and the home, and given all the challenges that I just mentioned. So I'd like to talk today about some things that we can do to improve and sustain our resilience. So Amal, I know you've only had a minute to look it over, but can you give us a rough sense of, how is this group of people doing in terms of their experience of those 13 stressors?
I only had a minute, but they are fast. So it would be anywhere between 2 all the way up to 13.
Okay. And what's your sense of the majority?
In the mid-range, 5 to
Okay.
6, I think is what I'm seeing the most of.
Yeah. So,
5 or 6, couple of
right.
13s, at least 7,
Yeah. So enough to be disturbing and perturbing and take you off your normal equilibrium. And so thank you for coming today to try to learn about things you can do to improve and sustain your resilience in the face of these ongoing stressors. So I'm going to talk about, did I miss a slide? No. I'm going to talk about 4 different pillars of enhancing our resilience. We're going to talk about how we can use our mind and our brain, our relationships, our systems, and our habits or actions to support how well we feel. As I said with the Just Do It model, this tends to focus just on habits or actions. So, for example, someone has the habit of perhaps thinking, I better get to sleep earlier. I must get more sleep. I'm really tired. And then the idea is, well, just do it. Just go to bed earlier. But without taking into account some of the thinking patterns, the other people involved, and systems that help that happen, it often doesn't. And when we're depleted, we really need the help from all 4 pillars. I do want to give a caveat today that the tactics that I'm going to explain are very unlikely to restore feeling great or normal, given our circumstances, but they are known to increase resilience and reduce suffering. I'm going to present many, many options, almost like a smorgasbord, and only some of them will apply to you. And so, try not to be overwhelmed that I'm presenting so many things. Only some will apply to you, and you might only work on 1 or 2 at a time, gradually over time. And the worksheet will help you discern what might be things that would help you in particular. But because everyone here is in somewhat diverse circumstances, I wanted to present a variety of options. So what are the 4 pillars? As I said, the mind, relationships, systems, and habits. So within the mind, we're going to talk about mindsets and thinking patterns, as well as the nervous system or brain, emotions. In relationships, we're going to talk about belonging and connection, boundaries, and supports. Within systems, we're going to look at how can we structure things to support us, what sort of tools and alarms we can use, and how to set up our environment. And then we move into some actual habits that are known to increase well-being and resilience, including movement or exercise, nourishment, and rest and sleep. There are more, but I'm trying to fit us in within the hour here. So let's start with the mind. And within the mind, let's talk about mindsets. What is a mindset? It's a set of assumptions and beliefs that influence our feelings and actions. And as a coach and a psychologist, this is a core part of my work with people, is to get at some mindsets that are not helpful and become more aware of those and replace them with mindsets that are constructive. So I put these in somewhat in order of particularly impactful, and this is a doozy. If you can move yourself more into the headspace of thinking that something is better than nothing, you will be your friend to yourself and to your resilience. Versus when we fall into all or none thinking, what I call epic or F it, we derail, because especially right now when we're depleted and spread thin, oh, I'm going to get up at the crack of dawn, I'm going to exercise for an hour, I'm going to, whatever the intention is that's so epic, and then it's not sustainable. And then people are prone to saying, well, forget it, I might as well do nothing. Versus thinking, well, if I can walk for 20 minutes or 10 minutes even, that's better than nothing. This is a very constructive mindset to inculcate. Another one is to be able to believe that you are learning and doing your best and treating yourself with compassion, fairness, friendliness, versus being harsh and critical, thinking I'm a screw up, I'm weak, I'm lazy, I never get things right, and so on. As we know, having a growth mindset and a mindset of being like a mentor to ourselves, we will uplift and encourage ourselves to learn and grow and improve, versus just like a really bad coach screaming at athletes, beating yourself down, especially during these hard times, is not actually helpful. So I often work with clients with thinking, well, what would you say to a friend? What would you say to a young person? And let's move towards saying that to yourself. I also find right now it's helpful to have a flexible mindset. I prefer to have or be whatever it is. I prefer to have a clean house. I prefer homemade food. I prefer to get all my work done, versus thinking I must have a clean house and everything homemade and get all my work done. When that's not possible, that sort of rigidity mentally sets us up for stress. Preferring things allows for the honesty of that, but it's not quite so tight and rigid and leading to vulnerability of failing. Another one that's really applicable right now is to allow yourself to be grateful for your good fortune. I think living in Canada right now is good fortune for those of us who do. And having, roofs over our heads and hot water and food and hopefully work. But also to allow for losses, genuine losses. I used to teach fitness on Monday night. I miss it on many levels. And that's a small loss for me. And I'm also grateful for everything I'm lucky for. Versus people will say to me, well, I have nothing to complain about, hashtag first world problems. And it's really invalidating to their losses, however small they are, they do add up. And so let's try to have a mindset that we're grateful for our good fortune, and we can be kind and validating about the things that we're missing right now. Some other mindsets are thinking that you will be glad you did, and that something now is a gift to your future self, versus I don't feel like it and I don't care about my future self. So when you make some food on the weekend, that's a gift to your after work self on a Monday or a Tuesday night when you're tired. When you lay out your clothing to go for a walk, and it's one less thing to bother with when you have time to do it. You'll be glad you did, and it's a gift to your future self. Maybe even going for the walk, you don't feel like it, but if for you find that walking is often something you're glad you did do, makes you feel better, then you're in that mindset. Another mindset particularly applicable for women is I can't pour from an empty cup. If I am not at least somewhat replenished and have some reserves, then I can't give. I can't give to my partners, family members, parents, kids, coworkers, reports, or whatever, versus thinking in a typically gendered way for women, my needs don't matter. And this is absolutely a stress-inducing way to think. So put your own oxygen mask on first. Finally, thinking that pleasure and ease support your good habits versus thinking suck it up, no pain, no gain. So let's go back to the exercise example. Well, too bad if you don't like getting up early, get up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. anyways, or too bad if you have tried to like winter and no matter what, you just don't, and you'd rather exercise inside. Let yourself allow for pleasure and ease in supporting your good habits so that they're more enjoyable and you're more able to get into them, especially when you're depleted and you don't necessarily have a lot of, sort of almost willpower. Try to build in, whether it's doing it with a friend, or we're going to talk further about social supports and so on. But, when we just hold our feet to the fire and be like, too bad, do it, that is not a helpful mindset. It never works in the long run. So what's another component of the mind? It's our actual brain and nervous system. And I have some nice little solutions here, which are 20 seconds long. So these are excellent for people under time pressure, i.e. probably almost all of us right now. So we'll talk about 3 of them. One of them is called taking in the good. And basically this is just to take about 20 seconds when you are doing something or experiencing something pleasurable. Could be a cup of coffee, could be the sun shining, could be your dog or cat's fur, or just something pleasant and pleasurable, to just really deliberately savor that. It's almost like take it in. This is shown to actually change your brain for the better in terms of some resilience and less negativity. So that's a fairly easy thing to do. The other one that I really like from the same neuropsychologist, Rick Hansen, is called Pet the Lizard. What does this mean? Part of our brain, the lizard brain, it's not the thinking brain, it's the lizard primitive brain. It's imagine a little lizard on a rock, and it's like, am I safe or not safe? Safe or not safe? It's a primal part of our brain that protects us from danger and threat. And of course, now we're not really facing predators eating us, but we're facing all those other stressors we just talked about. So when we breathe deeply in and out, we send that part of the brain the message that all is well. Because when you're breathing slowly and deeply and calmly on a primal level, it's like, oh, I'm not running for my life. I must be safe. So it's kind of reverse engineering of that. And so when we breathe in to a count of about 3 and out to a count of about 3, we pet the lizard and we say, it's okay, we're safe. This is known to reduce heart rate, blood pressure, create better hormones in the body that create a physiological resilience. And so often I'll say to my clients, if you're going to the washroom 5 times a day or so, depending on how much you drink, put a sticky note in the washroom and just do that says pet the lizard, and do your belly breathing. You can also do this in meetings. It's unobtrusive. So let's all do it right now for a few seconds. I just want you to breathe in, count of about 3, and the idea is that you feel your belly move. So let's all do this together. Okay, let's go. And out, and in, and out, and in, and out. Good. Super simple, but it actually has a scientific basis. So I would suggest to do this routinely throughout the day. You can do it if you're starting to feel stressed, but it's also good preventatively. And finally, the other 20-second solution is a connection one, such that a 20-second hug, if you have someone in your life that you can hug with, 20 seconds, which is probably about 17 seconds longer than most people hug, allows your nervous system to sort of co-regulate with someone else's, to settle and calm, reduces a hormone called oxytocin, which is soothing. Now, if you don't have someone in your life for hugging, you can also recreate this effect, believe it or not, by self-hugging. So you can, if you squeeze yourself really tightly, your brain doesn't know the difference. I know you might feel that. And again, if you are lonely and isolated right now, my deep sympathies to you. And I hope some of my suggestions coming up about connection will help you. But these are our 20-second solutions for the brain and nervous system. Also have some habits that support the brain. These take longer, and we're going to return to these in our fourth pillar at the end of the presentation that is about actual habits. So for example, it's known to support the nervous system to be outdoors, especially in nature. So if you're outdoors in an urban environment, that's better than nothing. But if you can be outdoors in a forest or in nature, that is better. Getting your heart rate up for about 20 minutes is very protective for mental health. And that doesn't have to be exercise. It could be dancing around your kitchen. People who meditate, practice mindfulness or prayer have found that those habits support their nervous system. Also immersive hobbies where you sort of lose yourself and you go into the flow of what you're doing. These have to be doable for now. Most people find in the evenings and often parts of the weekend as well, they're very depleted. Looking after their work responsibilities and their home and family responsibilities is often taken almost all of their gas in their tank. So perhaps complicated hobbies are really not doable right now, but something that you could do, you know, whether it's coloring for adults, or, you know, I'm doing a little bit of knitting right now, but it's very simple back and forth knitting, nothing too complicated. Some people love music and so on, but what helps you get into that forgetting about everything else is a good idea. The third leg of our use of the mind as our pillar of resilience is working with our emotions and our feelings. So what the research suggests is if we can name and allow our feelings, and in the handout, there is a feelings wheel with lots and lots of vocabulary around all the different feelings. If we can name them and put them into language, we move away from that sort of primal brain, which is quite wordless and very emotional, into our cortex, the outer part of our brain where we think, reason, and problem solve. So by simply naming our feelings, it actually reduces distress and acting out. And again, validating and allowing our feelings. It's not so much, again, this first world problem. We are allowed to have a mixture of feelings. So many people will learn to know that they're feeling 4 or 5 things at once, and that's okay. And maybe from there deciding if there's anything to be done. Another practice for emotional processing is the free writing practice. And this is also in the handout. But in brief, you just get some paper, get a pen, set a timer, maybe 5 minutes, and you start writing whatever you're thinking and feeling, and your pen does not stop. So it's like blah, 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 blah. This is not an essay. This is not a journal. This is not coherent, and you will shred it or destroy it when you're done. So the idea is to be very uncensored, very truthful, perhaps really angry, any number of feelings which are often not allowed, but are real and are in you and in your body, and to be able to process them without bothering anybody, and especially if you don't have someone who's able to take in your emotions, but you can process them yourself with the free writing practice. With regard to venting, actual venting, the research suggests that we should allow some commiseration, but also place some limits on it. So perhaps when you're, you can even set a timer. It's like, I want to be able to commiserate with my friends and colleagues, but if it goes on too long, we start to feel downtrodden. And so maybe is there some agreement to shift, like allow and then shift into what is going okay or what's hopeful. Most people right now are also looking at putting limits on their news and social media versus the doom scrolling and checking too often and having too much input of things that are usually bad news. So those are some ideas for working with your emotions in this pillar of the mind. Now, this slide has got a lot of writing on it. I didn't create it. I copied this to talk about the continuum between healthy emotional functioning or mental health functioning through to reacting, through to injured, through to ill. Oh, hang on one sec. Sorry, Amal, I'm not sure. I thought you raised your hand. I couldn't see what you were saying though.
Oh, sorry, that's me accidentally hitting a button.
Oh,
I will look to lower that. Thank you.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, so I want to put up this slide so that people have a sense of, for example, right now, how it's pretty normal that most of us are in some degree of common and reversible distress right now, where we might feel, for example, irritable, worried, forgetful, trouble sleeping, low energy, and so on. Given the stress levels right now, that's quite normal and is amenable to self-care and social support. If you start to find yourself increasingly angry, anxious, sad, preoccupied, not able to perform at school, work, or home, withdrawing, or heading more significantly into depression, anxiety, and so on, this is the range within which professional care is known to be very helpful and useful. In the resource sheet, I've listed a lot of free resources with websites, as well as search directories and ways in which, if you do need professional support, I hope that you will be able to access that so that you can bring your suffering back down into the more typical range right now. So what is the second pillar I want to talk about? That is relationships. Loneliness is epidemic right now. Loneliness was pretty bad before the pandemic, and now it's really, really bad because we are often in stay-at-home orders and lockdown and social distancing and so on. So the advice is to try to connect in ways that are, whether they're small, doable, virtual, or distance. Again, something is better than nothing. Can you have a standing date with someone so that you don't have to set it up over and over again? People talk about having wine every Sunday with their friends, or I have a coffee date with one of my dear friends every second Thursday morning at 8 a.m. and we don't have to arrange it. We just know it's going to happen. It's early in the morning for me because at night I'm pretty useless. And I try to walk with a friend most Saturdays and most Sundays so that I'm outside in nature, moving and connecting. So I'm really tipping into more than one pillar there. So try to do something, even if it is so not as satisfying as normal. Altruism is a protective factor in relationships where you are helpful. So if you express appreciation for others, if you are helpful to others as your own bandwidth allows, this is not to exhaust yourself, but if you give your neighbor a loaf of banana bread, or you help someone shovel their steps, and allowing others to be supportive to you, because actually it's a gift to them to be helpful. So by graciously receiving their help, you're actually allowing a connection and so on that we need right now. Boundaries. This is a common problem for women all the time. But during these times of depletion, I think it's really important to move away from an automatic yes, and to be able to say things like, let me get back to you on that. Let me cross-reference that with my other commitments. Let me check my calendar, and being able to say no. or no, not now, or not me, or yes, this, but not that, and being able to communicate and negotiate. This is particularly important with regard to work creep, where people working from home are working earlier in the morning and later at night. And this is so depleting because it takes away time and energy from the other habits that are important for our well-being, such as nourishing ourselves and moving and connecting and resting. So having some boundaries, especially around work, is crucial right now. Communication is a big part of relationships, and often this is challenging. So in the handout, there's some links to some methods like the nonviolent communication method. It's a bit of a rubric or recipe, being able to ask for what you want more so than saying what you don't want, which tends to make for conflict. Division of labor is a big source of conflict in most couples. And so I have also included some links in the worksheet to give you some information about this topic and how to perhaps address it constructively. And next we head into systems. So systems involve a number of components. One of them is sort of structures and routines. We're facing a lot of uncertainty right now. So if you can have some certainty about what happens when, you will comfort yourself with that psychologically, and you'll also reduce your decisional fatigue. Everyone knows how hard it is sometimes to decide, for example, what to make for dinner. And nobody wants to decide. So, I've listed a number of things here. I'm not suggesting you do all of them, but perhaps some alarms or calendars would be helpful around what's your morning routine. Some people are doing a fake commute. They used to walk to work or take a park and then walk or take a bus or something, and they read on the bus. Is that missing from your life now? And could you build it in? Bio breaks. If you're working from home, you're probably not having coworkers who are getting up and going for coffee, going for lunch, and you may lose track of time and, oh shoot, it's 3 o'clock and I haven't eaten lunch. So setting some alarms can help you with that. What is your shutdown and end time? As I mentioned, this work creep. Simple meal plan, doesn't have to be complicated. I personally just do the protein because I have to take it out of the freezer and I figure out the rest as I go. If it was too intense, I'd be stressed by it. But if I don't know what we're having, we just flounder, and people are using meal boxes and takeout and so on accordingly. Movement as an appointment, put it in your calendar, keep it just like you keep your other appointments. What is your wind down time? When would that begin? Do you need an alarm to remind you of that? And perhaps your sleep time so that you haven't lost track of time scrolling or watching Netflix. So using structure and routines vis-a-vis alarms and calendars can support some of your resilience behaviors. Tools to organize, prioritize, and particularly park things. As I said, if you're trying to not work excessively, you may need to prioritize what you do in a given day or week, but be able to park things that you're going to get to later. And you likely cannot do this in your brain. You're going to need something, whether it's Trello or Asana or one of the other apps or just whiteboard, sticky notes, something. Another aspect of systems is the environment we're in. What is in sight and accessible and what is not in sight and not accessible? And we can use this to facilitate and prime what we want to do and don't want to do. So I'm never a very thirsty person, but I know I need to hydrate. So I try to fill up 3 water bottles every night and put them in the fridge. And they're right in my face as I open the fridge. Oh, water, take one out, put it on my desk. The same with, say you want to eat more veggies, put them at grabbable, ready to go. Maybe you don't want to eat as many crackers, so you put them at the back of the cupboard. You want to go outside. Well, where are your mitts? Where's your snow pants? Where's your stuff? So you can use your environment to set yourself up for success. Tracking is a way of just noting what you're doing, what you're not doing, having some sort of a gentle audit, keyword gentle. What were your habits this past week that you were successful in your intentions of doing them? And if not, what happened? What could be How could you improve a little bit, and so on? What are the risk factors, and just being gentle about that moving forward. And finally, we look at some actual sort of habits and behaviors that are known to help with well-being and therefore resilience. And these are movement, nourishment, sleep, rest, and relaxation. There's more, but these are the 4 ones that I chose to hone in on. So how can we use movement to enhance our resilience? So for mental health, about 150 minutes a week of getting your heart rate up is known to be a good amount, and bouts as short as 10 minutes count. So this goes against that mindset of all or nothing. In your handout, there's some worksheets, and I'm going to go through a few examples at the end of the habit section here, where what is a mindset that helps you succeed in your movement intention? What are relationships involved that are either supportive or need negotiated? And what are some systems that will help you be organized and, on point with this? And so this is how we do the 4 pillars. So there is the action or habit, there's the mind component, the relationships component, and the systems component. So in your worksheets, you have like a 4 square worksheet with a couple of examples and a blank one for you to use for yourself to help you in a simple way actually make good on these 4 pillars. Another habit that is important for well-being and things like blood sugar and brain glucose and being able to think clearly is being nourished. And, trying to make this at this point in time quite simple and good enough rather than perfect. People get very perfectionistic about food. And just trying to focus maybe on more nutritious more fruit, more vegetables, more whole grain, more lean protein, whatever it is, rather than saying less, typically carbs, processed food, sugars, and so on. And we'll also go through some ways you can set yourself up for more success with your nourishment. Sleep. Most of us are not getting enough sleep. It can be really helpful to allow for a significant wind down time, half an hour to an hour, trying to get earlier to sleep rather than the night dragging on. If you worry at night, you can write down your worries. Most of us have 5 or 10 favorite worries. And when you're not worrying, perhaps during the day, write down some reassuring thoughts to yourself, some coping thoughts. And then you can refer to those if you're lying awake at night worrying. You can also write to-do notes or I send myself emails because I always check my emails in the morning. So I'll just send myself an email that says, I don't know, call so-and-so. And then it's out of my brain and I'm not lying there with it ruminating. Another aspect that's important in our habits right now is rest and relaxation. As I've mentioned previously, taking breaks. Sometimes we need a menu of options for what would be relaxing because, maybe working on your paint by numbers would be relaxing, but maybe you don't have any gas in your tank for that and you'd rather lie in a hot bath or actually rather talk to a friend or rather go for a walk or rather watch a show. And so sometimes having a bit of a menu of options for what you feel like can be helpful. Alcohol consumption is on the rise. Health recommendations are that we do not drink daily and that our total number of drinks per week is 7 or less for women. So if that's something you're struggling with, there are some resources in the resource guide. So let's just work through 1 or 2 of these with some examples, just so that it's really clear. So when you fill in your worksheet, begin with your habit. What is the action that you want to be different? So let's go to the one I said about eating more fruits and veggies. So I want to eat vegetables at lunch and dinner and fruit at 1 or 2 snacks, something like that. So what's a mindset that could help with that? Well, maybe the something is better than nothing mindset. I don't have to be perfect at this. I can make baby steps. I think the mindset of pleasure and ease is really important with food, that if you say you don't like salad, don't eat salad, eat soup or stew or roasted veggies or raw veggies with dip. I mean, just, be kind to yourself that way. So that mindset around pleasure and ease is important here. Relationships, who's going to support you? Maybe you live with someone who would help you prep some veggies. Maybe you have some people in your home who don't like veggies and they're going to whine about it. So, what's your plan around that? Can they have frozen peas and you'll have roasted root vegetables? I don't know, think ahead. And then systems, when will you perhaps prep some veggies or buy pre-prepared things that are ready to go, or have stuff at the ready? What do you need to look up? Do you know how to roast veggies? Who can find me a recipe, or Google it? So you can sort of see that there isn't just the habit of I'm going to eat more vegetables and dang it, like I'm just going to do it. It's also factoring in how you have to think, who else is involved, and how can you set it up systemically such that you're more successful. And in the worksheet, I give another one about exercise. And I don't want to use up all our time here because I want to allow some time for questions and discussion. But, definitely with exercise or movement, I think it's important for women to know that you can't pour from an empty cup, and that if you take some time away, whether that's from your work or your family members, especially children, chances are when you come back, you'll be clearer minded, perhaps more patient, more present, and it's time well spent. I know I raised 3 kids and have always worked full time, and I sometimes struggle to take time away from them to exercise, but I just knew it made me a better parent and a healthier human being in the long run for them. So just working on your mindsets around that, as well as perhaps who will be your buddy. I often text one of my friends we text each other about what we did for exercise. Sometimes people can walk with each other, or even having a favorite YouTuber is not someone you actually have a relationship with, but if you're doing yoga with Adrienne, you and Adrienne, she's part of your support system, and so on. So I don't want to belabor this anymore. We can go through some more examples if you want to ask about it. But basically, I love this quote: "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." So just make one small change and another, and definitely get support. There's many, many supports listed on your resource sheet. So that's the end of my slide. So I'm going to stop the share and open things up.
Yeah, for our Q&A. Thank you so much, Deb. That was great. We kind of had a bit of a conversation going in the chat while you were talking, epic versus effort, which I really loved. Sharon saying she's guilty of having an epic mindset and then disappointing myself later. Sometimes it's just nice knowing you're not the only one. Even you saying, there's 5 to 10 things that you worry about. It's like, me too. That's part of the process as well, is just sharing this information and spreading it around.
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah. I'm going to take a look at the chat here. We've got one. There are all great ideas, to be honest. Elise says it's a little overwhelming because now I'm seeing so many different things that I should be doing differently. Is there anything that you recommend tackling first to make the rest come easier?
That's a great question.
Yep.
I have 2 ideas around that. One is something that would be a quick win. So for example, those 20-second practices, whether it's the connection hug with someone else or yourself, whether it's the belly breathing, like to do one of those, or savoring your coffee or whatever it is. They don't take a lot of time, and they're good bang for your buck. If you only had to pick one of those, I would pick the belly breathing. It's very helpful neurologically. So one idea is a quick win, or maybe it's to be more organized about grocery shopping, because if you grocery shop, then you eat better, and if you eat better, you feel better, and it's just a good return on investment for that. The other one is more along the lines of not so much a quick win, but if you know from past experience that when you get more sleep, you function so much better, and you're less, you know, many people who are sleep deprived can often feel quite fragile, a bit weepy even. They've done studies with soldiers where they deprived them of sleep for 3 days, and they created psychological vulnerabilities. So, you know, for many people, it's honing in on one thing. Is it my sleep that's foundational, or is it my exercise? If I exercise, almost everything else can fall into place. So it's kind of my big rock. And I think for most people, those are different things. So quick win or big rock is my advice on that question.
And it's funny, you said breathe and sleep, like two things that we are meant to do every single day, all day, or for a part of the day.
Yes.
Sharon says, have you seen an example of a client who took one step at a time that led to greater impact down the road?
Definitely. I think of someone I know who was very, very sedentary, very out of shape, worked way too much, who started walking, and then went from walking to like walking 15 minutes and then 20 and 25 and 30, and then a little bit of walk jogging, and then jogging, and then running, and went on to become quite fit, and really shifted her relationship with fitness and health and also work-life balance. But it began with literally a 15-minute walk.
Yeah, Susie's just saying, you know, I used to feel guilty for choosing exercise over spending time with my baby. Now I tell myself that it's for my baby. Sandra's saying, I'm having trouble prioritizing with everything going on in life. Do you have recommendations on how to evaluate what to say yes to and what to say no to? Some people say it's easier right now because it's the pandemic and you can just blame the pandemic, but there are some people are so yes to everything, no matter how much is on their plate.
Well, one thing is, as I said, stepping away from the automatic yes so that you have time to reflect. And when you're reflecting, I think part of it is really trying to tune into your body and your sort of heart, gut, body. Do you or do you not want to do this? Of the consequences to yourself versus the consequences to other people, like, is it a sacrifice to yourself, but it's worth it for the variety of reasons, or is it actually not? And that's a difficult process. And I know sometimes when I'm coaching people, we might work on building those capacities for some weeks and months around the inner compass, because if that has not been well developed and it's all about pleasing others, serving others, then sometimes people don't even know what they want or need because they just have not had enough practice of turning inwards. But take time so that you're not caught off guard and just automatically saying yes, and to really question some of the assumptions, especially as females, about being nice, being helpful, being pleasing, and that it's okay to disappoint people, to frustrate people, to leave people, to adjust and adapt, especially if there are people who will take advantage of you if you are completely overly generous, overly giving, overly self-sacrificing. And so again, it's a major topic. It's a major point of growth and evolution, but work on it because it's an important one, especially when we are depleted.
I know I said that people kind of use the pandemic for reasons why they don't want to do something or go somewhere, but Denise brings up a great point saying, now that we don't have an end date in sight for the pandemic, back to normal life, how do you calm the anxiety and stress caused by the unknown? She says, I feel that not having light at the end of the tunnel is extremely tough, and you are not the only one.
It is profoundly disturbing because never in our lives before could we not say, oh, what should we do this summer for summer vacation? Or what can we expect next Thanksgiving or Christmas? This is absolutely new terrain, barring, I guess, people who lived through World War II. We've never done this before. So tons of compassion for it. A lot of what the neuropsychologists recommend is being more in the present, in the here and now. Right here, right now, fundamentally, I am okay. I am okay. I'm safe. I'm healthy. My loved ones are safe and healthy. They're okay. And then the anxiety will say, well, that could change. That could change. It's like, yes, that could change. And I will cope with that if and when it does, because I'm resourceful. I'm a resourceful, smart person, a capable person, and I do have supports, and I will access supports. So we don't have to go through the infinite plan of what will I do if this and what will I do if that, but just knowing I'm bright, I'm resourceful, I have supports, I will access supports. We can sometimes just reassure ourselves that fundamentally we're capable and we will survive. We may be very disappointed. I think most of us had, for example, disappointing Christmases, very strange Christmases. And it's normal to not like that. It's normal to even cry about that and be sad about that. Again, allowing those feelings. But to trust in your competence and trust that you are supported and that this will end. We don't know when, but it's, I do compare it sometimes to World War II. And I sort of think, well, we're not in food rationing, and this isn't going to go on for 4 or 5 years, and then years of rationing after the war. Not to diminish my suffering, not to make fun of it and say, oh, first world problem, but more just if people could live through that, I can live through this.
Thanks, Deb. Yeah, I think a big thing for people is having an end date to something. Like Sandra said, just having a date, a spot to circle on the calendar. And when you can't do that, it's like overwhelming. Lubna wants to ask, any targeted strategies for extroverts who are missing out on most activities that replenish them and feel like we are constantly depleted?
Well, distanced things like making sure you do get together with people in real life at the 6-foot distance, and virtual things, virtual game parties and so on, again, depending on if you like that type of thing or not. Chatting to people, maybe taking your coffee break, having a Zoom coffee break during the workday, because normally you would chit chat with your coworkers in the corridor or something, or walk down to Starbucks and get a drink. So can you make facsimiles of that? Can you, sometimes people even have dinners together, even though they're apart, but they make the same recipe, or they have takeout and wine and they sit and chat, and it's almost like a dinner party. It's not, of course, but again, something better than nothing. Those are some ideas that come to my mind.
Yeah, and you got to start putting some in motion, because like we were just talking about with Sandra's question, it's not going away anytime soon. Lubna says she's missing out on the Starbucks lineups. Really? They're so long all the time.
Yeah, but even talking about the baristas,
yeah.
like that's called, researchers love to name everything, that's called a weak social tie. So when you chit chat with your barista and people randomly throughout your day, and you don't really know them and you never hang out together, but it's a weak social tie. Actually, those little tiny interactions create that sense of connection and belonging. And, you know, for example, when I taught my fitness class, there was maybe 15 women and I knew their names, but we weren't friends other than that, but it was still like a nice little connection point. So when you are out and about at the grocery store or wherever you are still in public, or even walking down the street, shoot the breeze with people, chat with people. It's actually good for you. It's, of course, we need our dear friends and our close connections, our intimate connections, but these sort of lighter little bits and pieces of social interaction are actually protective as well.
Great. So much good advice today. I think that's it. I don't think there are any other, let's check one more time. She's talking about a Zoom water cooler hour with my team weekly. Yeah, I do love that. Is having a set time where we are going to have wine. It's going to be every week, and that's kind of your break from whatever this is going on in the world. All right, there are no other questions, so let me make sure. Yes. Thanks again, everyone, for spending your afternoon with us. If you want to hold on to your handouts from Deb and check them out, reach out to Deb if you'd like. And don't forget your bio breaks. I love that part. There's going to be a quick poll on your screen if you could take a second to fill that out. Our next event happens March 4th, and it's Leaving Imposter Syndrome Behind, and that's with Sheila Goldgrab. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you, Deb.
Thanks so much, Deb.
Yeah.
We got a recording of that for you to send to you.
Good.
Yeah.